All right, welcome to the last in our three-part series of community conversations. It's our fifth annual community conversations, which is super, super exciting. I've said it before, I'll say it again. We're now kindergarteners, and that feels great. I'm also especially excited for this panel because we don't get to talk about the intersections of queerness and transness and being BIPOC and all the other things that we are and hold as our identities. So anyway, welcome to everybody that is joining us either live or viewing this later. My name is Brianna Bragg and I use they or she pronouns.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ria Graves, and I use she and her pronouns as well.
And my name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she and her.
I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves in a beautiful way after we get through some of our container building for today. For those of you that are joining us, we do have ASL interpreting. We also have auto captioning, and we will have a transcript of the entire program today available when we upload to our YouTube. And before we get rolling, let's just take a minute to take a deep breath, to ground ourselves in this space, to bring in our intentionality with this kind of a conversation. Release the tension out of our bodies for a minute, release our tension in our jaws, and just be present in this moment and witnessing the beauty of having these intentional conversations with one another. And before we get going, I want to call into the space our ancestors, those that have gone before us, those that are going to be our ancestors, those that have done the unending work of resisting colonization since it began. We want to call into the space those that continue to push forward and do this work of uplifting us, of pushing us forward so that we can be where we are today and so that we can do the work so our children and our grandchildren in our communities can be to where they need to be in the future. We also want to call into this space our stolen, kidnapped, and enslaved African siblings that were brought to this country, whose labor was used to build the wealth of this country while retaining it very little for themselves due to systemic barring. We call into this space both our Native, our Indigenous, and our African siblings, not at the exclusion of everybody else, but because this is where the legacy of colonization started here in this country, and every other system and every other policy and every other law that exists because of stolen land and stolen labor. And every other form and system of oppression was built on top of that. And we say that not because we're just trying to say a thing, but we say that because it's important for us to remember where we came from so that we can make decisions and be intentional about where we're going to go next and how we're going to do it together. So thank you for that. And that brings us to community conversations. So community conversations, we've been going for, like I said, 5 years now. And this is an opportunity for us to have intentional conversations. So many people in spaces with us around community conversations are community organizers, are working multiple jobs, are volunteering on the side, are taking care of their family and their community. And we don't often get the opportunity to sit and have deep conversations that are meaningful to us in the ways that we want them to be with the people that we love and trust. And so that's how community conversations came about, is how do we have these messy, nuanced conversations, and how do we carve out that time to engage in those conversations? And so the theme this year really came out of a lot of the Supreme Court decisions that were being made on behalf of us that are impacting all of our lives. We talked earlier about ICWA and water rights in Indigenous communities. We talked about affirmative action. We talked about the bans of CRT and all the anti-Black education policies that are being put in place in different states. And now we're going to talk about the anti-queer and anti-trans legislation that's kind of sweeping this country, but also made its way to the Supreme Court in the case of Creative 303. There's also been a lot of drag bans throughout different states. There's been a Don't Say Gay policy that came about over the last couple of years. So there are a lot of ways that policies and legislation are being enacted to eradicate our community as queer and trans people. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. We're also going to just talk about our lives and talk about how those things are entangled in the policies in our communities, right? And so before we jump in to that conversation, just wanted to lay a few community agreements, both for those that are joining us live, but also so that we have an understanding of how we're going to be engaging with one another today. And so the first one is, you are the author of your own story. So whatever you share is about your life and your experiences, and that is the right way to show up. We also ask that if you're someone that doesn't take up a lot of space traditionally, that maybe you take a healthy risk and try. And if you are somebody that does take up a lot of space, to be mindful and make sure that we're all engaging in the conversation in the ways that feel good for us. But however you show up today, we're just really glad that you're here. We also want to remind ourselves to stay in our lanes, which means that we can talk about ourselves, the communities that we identify with, but we're not going to be talking about communities that we are not ourselves a part of, because that is for those folks to talk about. We're also going to remember that intent is important. Many of us know each other. Many of us have worked together before in different capacities. However, our impact is always more important than our intent. And so we're going to address that first if there happens to be some kind of transgression or situation that needs it. And then in this space here, we're going to sit with, believe, and hold in our hearts that liberation and healing are possible. Do these feel, for the panelists, like good community agreements to move forward with? Yeah, thumbs up and a nod, 2 thumbs up, great. Thank you. And now is the part of the time together where you get to introduce yourselves. You can share your name, your pronouns, any cultural context that you feel is relevant, any community roles that you might have, and anything else that you want to share or talk about. And I'll go ahead and maybe I'll let Hollis, would you like to go first?
I will go first. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this conversation. My name is Hollis Kinner. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm just happy to be here. I think I attended one of these events in 2021 when I was an attendee, which was really nice. So I'm honored to be in this side of the event. I'm a social worker by background. I'm a social work educator. I'm a consultant. I've done a lot of work within organizations advocating for queer and trans folks and for other marginalized folks, racialized folks. That is my focus, just advocating to make sure we can, to mitigate harm and bring more people into the process. Most of the organizations I work in are predominantly white. So in a lot of ways, it's me going against a huge system with my work, as many of you know, and it can be very taxing, but that'll probably come up later in this conversation. But yeah, I think that's what I have for my introduction. Thank you. Oh, also just great to be in this space with you all. And many of you I consider friends and folks I've collaborated with. And yeah, thanks.
That was a great introduction, Hollis. Talofalava, Aloingoa, Manmalo, Ala Ilima, Ma'ua'u, Lefa'atane, Samoa. Warm civic greetings in Samoan. My name is Manmalo Ala Ilima, or Malo for short. And I am Fa'atane, which means in the manner of a man in Samoan. I also identify as a cutie pie, a queer and trans Pacific Islander, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I am the former executive director for Utopia PDX, which organizes and advocates for cutie pie and other cutie BIPOC folks, and co-founder of the Oregon Pacific Islander Coalition, a former a former board chair for Q Center and Pride Northwest, and a former board of director for Apano's C3 board. So I have a lot of nonprofit leadership experience, but what I really want to be known for is just the ability to be a human being that observes and respects other life other than my own, and seek for understanding. Um, and currently, I own my own consultant firm, Pacifica Impact LLC, and I do a lot of DEI, BJ consulting. A lot of my work was out of Oregon, but I've been getting some contracts here in California, which I'm really happy about. And that's about it. Thank you, UPRISE, for the invite and to share in the space with the other panelists.
I always think it's funny how so many of us are like, yeah, like, that's it, right? Like that was like decades of amazing organizing and nonprofit work. Like between the two of you, like there's so much that you have done for the community. So I'm just like, we're just so grateful that you're here and that you chose to spend time with us today. I think, you know, in setting up this conversation, for those of you that are joining us, Creative 303 was a Supreme Court decision that kind of like was really, really messed up. There's not really another way to say it or talk about it. It was a made up lawsuit that kind of made its way to the Supreme Court, that then the Supreme Court decided that creative based businesses were legally allowed to discriminate against queer and trans people. And now that's just the law, and it's definitely impacted our communities, and many of our communities, many of our queer and trans communities have also been impacted by the anti-trans and anti-drag bans that have been happening all over the country, that have you know, I'm sure both of you being community organizers have heard from your community members, how do I move, how do I get out of here, how do I keep myself safe, right? And so these conversations are so important, not because anyone here is an expert, but because we all are experiencing this together in a new iteration of anti-queer and anti-transness. And our community is so dynamic and so beautiful that like those are the things also that are like so powerful about who we are in this space. And so coming from a place of not experts, but people living your lives, doing the work that you do, we have our like first grounding question. What does engaging in policy advocacy mean to you, knowing that we're on stolen land that was built with stolen labor? What does that mean? What does it mean to engage in any kind of policy advocacy? And you can take that in whichever way you want to, whether that's within governmental systems, advocacy within your own communities. What does that look like? And either of you can unmute and chat as much or as little as you would like.
Thank you for the question. I think when I've always community organized, it's always been in the forefront that this land is not my land that I am originally from. My ancestral home is actually in Oceania in Samoa. And so I think about my ancestral home and being a visitor on someone else's ancestral home, and then knowing about enslaved people who actually built the economy for this nation. So it's two-pronged on my end as a community organizer. It's thinking about where I'm at in the diaspora for my own people, and then being relatable for those who actually had their land stolen and the labor that it was built on. So I do a lot of cross-community work, not just in advocating for queer and trans and Pacific Islanders, or like Pacific Islanders in the greater sense, or the greater LGBTQ community, but always, you know, in the forefront that, you know, if we organize, we got to be mindful and respectful of who is here, how things became what it is, how the laws are being influenced from that experience. And as a newcomer, I'm always mindful about that, and that's pretty much how I try to formulate my community organizing. It's not a afterthought, it is at the forefront of my organizing.
Thank you, Malo. I also forgot to mention like what I do for work. I currently work at Cascade AIDS Project. I'm the Deputy Director of Diversity and Inclusion. Previously worked at Portland State at the Queer Resource Center as the Queer Students of Color Resources and Retention Coordinator, where I organized their annual Queer Students of Color Conference. And then I finished up there as the interim director. So regarding this question, I agree with Malo. This is something I always keep at the front of my work and my advocacy, just knowing that that this land is not what the current country says it is. So I think that's very important. That song, what you said, Malo, "This land is your," you mentioned something that made me think of that song, and that song makes me want to throw up. You know that song, "This land is your land," this land really makes me want to throw up, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, just keeping it at the forefront of the work and my advocacy. Also, just I do a lot of DEI work, and which is important, but anti-racism work is also very important. It's not the same thing. People like to equate the two things, that anti-racism is DEI work. I like to, I mean, the anti-racism should be the foundation for the DEI work, but it should not be assumed in that acronym DEI. So that's something I always try to bring to the forefront, just letting folks know that it's always about racial justice and anti-racism work, leading with race. In my work, I always like to see who is at the table, who is not at the table. I ask my questions, why are they not at the table? And then whoever's at the table, I like to see how much space they're taking up, or how much space they're not taking up, or who actually has the opportunity to take up space, because diversity and inclusion are not the same things. I know a lot of people like to, tokenize folks of color and bring them all together, but then don't include them. So it's which causes more harm. So that's something I really think a lot about. Diversity is not inclusion. So just being mindful, and always, for me, leading with race and remembering where I am. I'm not from Portland. I'm not, my ancestors are also not from this land that we currently stand on or sit on. So it's just something for me to be really mindful about, including even in Portland. Portland has a very unique historical context with many different communities, which I'm still learning about. And for me, it's about closing my mouth and doing a lot of listening so I can understand and really hear what folks are saying.
You brought up like the weird, unique history that Portland has around racism. It is its own beast. I don't even it's its own thing. Thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that all of us have touched on is being queer, being trans. Like it has a different I don't know, it has a different risk today. I think that the risk has shifted throughout history, right? And it looks different today than it has in the past, for a lot of different reasons, but policy being one of them. I wonder, what does it mean to you to be queer or trans in the world right now? And if we can dig a little deeper too, how does your queerness or transness show up in your advocacy work, in policy work, to kind of get beyond or transcend the limitations of simply this is my sexual identity or my sexual orientation, and really to think about instead it's a way of being and knowing and existing that is beyond the colonized perspective. So I know, big questions, but wherever you want to take that is great.
I'll start. When I co-founded Utopia PDX, which provides sacred spaces for cutie pies and advocate for us, I didn't realize like how much I needed to grow. And when I met one of my mentors, Iden Campbell, that's where the reality kind of helped encourage me to go on my own path for transitioning. Like it took me a while to even, have that real conversation with myself because as a community organizer or as a community leader, you know, you're expected like, oh, you know everything. You must be connected to all these things. You don't have health problems or health cares, right? You can shoulder everything. But the truth of the matter is that as you're advocating for groups of people, that you have an intersecting identity with, um, I had to have a real like wake up moment in conversation with Iden, in terms of what does being a Fatana means to me. And actually, I started like last year in November going on testosterone. But I had been organizing for Utopia since April of 2017. So there was like 5 years where I just kind of like, I don't know, eclipsed my own journey because I was so worried about how to organize for my community. And um, so there's that one aspect for me as a community leader was putting the needs or what I felt I thought I should do is put the needs of the community before my own needs. And that sort of leads to, the way one would advocate in terms of how to effectuate policy, right? Is unless I got real with my own life in this community that I advocate for, um, I needed to learn that yeah, I can do these other things, but if I'm not, providing self-care to myself, self-love, and honoring my own journey for my own transition, that it could add to this larger narrative for the community that I'm trying to advocate for. So that's one thing as a person who transitions later on in life, um, that it's dealing with my sexual orientation was okay, but now it's also my gender identity. Um, so it helps, having that clarity now and continuing to grow. Um, but it makes my case feel like I'm really authentic when I'm speaking to like a board of commissioners or to like state legislature, that there's this sense of peace that I have continued on my journey and not just stopped myself and thought that the greater needs of my community um, outweighed what I needed personally. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is that if you would like to continue to advocate for policy changes or to reach out to different electeds, that you don't forget your own personal voice in the fight because it's just as crucial and critical, and it is a piece of the larger movement for the community.
Thank you, Malo. Yeah, this is a deep question. I feel like in many ways, since I started coming of age, which is, many years ago, there's been a lot of acceptance and tolerance gained over the last few decades, but really recently, a lot of this stuff has really been under attack in a way that I haven't seen in my lifetime, alongside so many other social issues and freedoms, etc. For me, being how can I say this? So I identify as Black, but also as queer, same gender loving, whatnot. And Portland is a very unique interesting place to be those things, especially as a 6'5" cisgender Black man, which I've learned. I'm from the Bay Area. I spent most of my life in the Bay Area, which is pretty diverse. And I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which I believe is about 40% Black. And the Bay Area is just a mixture of just all kinds of people, cultures, ethnicities, races. It's really, it's really diverse in that sense. So, and I can tell you, Portland is just a context for me where a lot of things I didn't realize prior to moving here. And visiting Portland and living here are two different things. So I remember when I visited, I was like, okay, cool. And then I moved here, and then the honeymoon ended. And then you start noticing different things. So I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I would just say, for the most part, my queerness, I often feel, is very invisibilized, because people, the first marker they see is a 6'5" Black man. And so there's that. So it's invisibilized. But in other contexts, I feel like people know that I'm queer and Black, and then but they find the queer side more of a way to get in, more softer, more relatable, or more acceptable. So just trying to reconcile that too. Regarding advocacy, I'm able to use my identities, though. I've been in positions where I'm like, okay, where I can speak up for folks. As example, Portland State, when I was organizing the conference and supporting trans and queer students, I really loved that. It was hard, just going against the grain of the university and all the bureaucracy and the politics. And you bring something up, they want to have well, let's have a meeting about it. Then we'll have a committee about that meeting. And then we'll have a summit about that committee, about the meeting. It's always a loop. So by the time anyone gets to anything, it's like people already graduated. Now we got to start all over, or people dropped out because they got harmed. So it's really exhausting, but I have been able to use my identities in that sense to really advocate for people and support folks. And right now my role is a lot about supporting employees so they can better serve service users in a way that's not harmful. Yeah, I think that's what I got.
That was a lot. Yeah. Thanks, Alice. I think this question is always one that is rolling around for me in my thought process as a Two-Spirit person, and like figuring out what that means and where our place is and how do we restore. Malo, you talked a little bit about your cultural context with that as well, and Hollis, you talked about like your experience as well. And I think like that's kind of like where this question is coming from too. It's like, what does it look like to restore the both and part of who we are in this space and in this work and in this advocacy, knowing that we still exist within colonization? Like, how do we push for and make those liminal spaces that we're trying so hard to make, while also knowing that this system is never going to fully see us in all of our ness, right? Like whatever that is, right? Like it's never going to see us for all those things. Like what you were just saying, Hollis, like this is what people see first, and sometimes this is never even seen. And then in other places, this is seen first, and then nobody cares about this, right? Like, and it's like, how do we get seen in our wholeness? And what a gift it is to hold all of those things in one body, right? And how that shifts our mindset, our experiences, our ways that we interact with the world. I don't know if that brings up anything else for you.
I'm glad you brought that up, Brianna, because I'll give an example. And I think every culturally specific community or organization definitely has their unique experience as to how the COVID-19 pandemic, just came through. So we're like, I guess, somewhat post, COVID, even though it's still very active, but we have, treatment for it and vaccines. Um, but I'll share, Utopia PDX was a very young, culturally specific organization that was volunteer led back in, we started in 2017. By the time the pandemic rolled around in 2020, um, you know, our community, the Pacific Islander community, as well as, Cutie BIPOC folks in general, were impacted greatly. And I got to work with some really great people in Multnomah County with the Oregon Health Authority, City of Portland. Um, and in addressing these kind of things as a, Cutie Pie led organization, we just barely got our 501c3, and we had to learn quickly how to pivot from our mission slightly, even though we had a really like health and wellness focus, but like we're trying to keep our people from dying, and it was interesting uh when applying for RFPs or just for the different levels of municipalities, so OHA, Multnomah County Health Department, City of Portland, um, and knowing like it would have been really great if they had like some technical assistance for us as a small community-based organization. And we are queer and trans Pacific Islander led. I was working a full-time job, with the American Red Cross, and I was doing this job for free, as was many, who were all volunteer led CBOs at the time. But was the crazy thing was, we're queer and trans Pacific Islander led, and we're in a Zoom call with different CBOs that had different levels, where they had like 30 staff deep, you know, they've been around, for 20 years. And, we didn't have any like staff, you know, and yet, the idea was to treat us the same as, the same level of experience going through an RFP process, having, I didn't know we needed to have like, insurance for all these different things, you know, didn't know that, oh yeah, we need to have actually payroll and a bookkeeper. All these things were new, as, a Cutie Pie led organization that was trying to like help our greater community with this pandemic. And the idea that a queer and trans person of color or organization can take the lead role in helping organize other Pacific Islander organizations, which later developed into OPEC, it says a lot about how much we can do with very little resources and very little like connection, with varied levels of municipalities. And then people in these places and in foundations taking the risk and trusting us for knowing our communities to actually help them. Because it was new to everybody. Nobody's been through a pandemic. Nobody knew how to manage one. And yet I feel that people in trusted positions in different levels of municipalities and at foundations were also shifting and reacting in a positive way to how to help small, culturally specific, community-based organizations that actually were doing the work, give them the resources and support for that.
Thank you, Malo. Rihanna, to answer your question, I think it was how can I think you said, how can we get folks to see us basically for our compromise, I'm sorry, our comprehensive selves? I think I have so many thoughts about this. I think people need to get off social media and people need to start self-educating themselves and not expect us to educate them. I come across just in so many interactions, just so many well-intentioned, well-meaning, I didn't mean that, I didn't mean this conversations. And those things get old. People get harmed all the time. And I people just get, harm just keeps happening. So I think it's gonna take not me getting folks to see me. Because I'm just me. I'm just trying to exist as they are. I think folks need to start doing some work, some internal personal work, whatever that looks like for them, whether it, and also just start operating with some humility and some empathy, and not expect things and information and community context to just be handed to you. It's about really being humble and being mindful about what you don't know, being committed to your own continuous learning. Those are the things that I think is important. And Mala, you talked about the pandemic, which is so important. And I think about 2020, and this is something I think about a lot. And not saying this is you, Mala, but when I think about 2020 and I have conversations about 2020, most people just talk about the pandemic. And I'm like, wait a minute. If I remember correctly, there was a lot of stuff going on in 2020. The pandemic was probably, it kicked off the year pretty much kicked off with the pandemic, but there was a lot of stuff. George Floyd, protests, people getting snatched off the streets, fires, the election, all kinds of stuff. And I say this just to bring up the fact that, including myself and a lot of people I know from communities of color and other marginalized communities, people have a lot of unreconciled trauma. Like, that trauma did not just poof go away with the vaccine or with Biden coming into office. It's kind of like, if I remember correctly, I remember watching the news, hunkered down in my studio, isolated from family, not knowing what was going to happen, having people worry about me worrying about family, couldn't travel, didn't want to die by myself, didn't want my family, just so much stuff going on. But yeah, it's kind of like the world just went back to business as normal, and I'm like, a lot of people I know, including myself, there's just stuff that I haven't really had a chance to stop and really reflect on and do some work on. So I think that unreconciled trauma, that unhealed trauma is still a big part of the conversation. I know people have lost family members and close friends and stuff with the pandemic. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you both brought that up. And then Hollis, you brought up all the other stuff that was happening in 2020, because there's so much grief. There's so many layers of grief. And the intersecting identities that we all hold in that space, in this space here, like that just compounds the grief, right? Because we had all those layers. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Maybe we can also talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that was happening, in the last couple of years too, but around drag.
Yeah, I'm appreciating this conversation so much. So thank you all for being here again. We know that there are so many beautiful elements of queer culture and queer community that it causes to celebrate. And I think of drag as one of those things. So drag has a long history in our community, and there have been recent state bans that have taken place, which are veiled transphobia, not even veiled. I don't even know if you can call it veiled. But what does drag mean to you and the community, and why is it such a big fight right now? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Take that wherever you want to go.
Thank you for the question. And Hollis, I just loved your response from the previous session. I think to me, drag kind of represented this expression that was like out of the norms in terms of how one was presenting themselves. But it also was like this art form that was celebrated, you know, the ability to not live a fantasy, but, you know, to be appreciative of fashion, you know, of music. And, you know, for in my culture, in the Samoan culture, we have fa'afafine, which is in the manner of a woman, and they have these incredible pageants back home, and um, it's something that's celebrated not just within our own like smaller community, but the whole like Samoan community actually like attends and celebrates, and you know they vote for who they really want to win this pageant. Um, when I think about it here, you know, it still has the same impact in terms of how it makes you feel seeing somebody being celebrated. And uh, I guess in the context of, you know, people treating drag queens with vitriol in terms of having a reading time with youngsters, I think is offensive when the leading cause of death for young people is by gun violence, you know? So that's where I kind of have this really difficult time accepting how they could take this form of what I feel is an expression of art, of fashion, you know, celebration, and taking something as innocent as reading to a group of youngsters as a band. Yet I don't see like drag queens going into the schools actually causing violence, like actual violence, you know? So it it's terrible, you know, for that comparison to even be there. And then to, you know, perpetuate this is something that folks should be in fear of, that we're going into these schools, you know, doing this to kids. Like I don't see the correlation, you know, it doesn't map out. And I just feel like there is a place for drag to be, and um it shouldn't be hidden, you know. We're long past those days, and it should be treated with a space of respect.
Thank you, Malo. That was so beautiful. And so true too. Um, yeah, I think about the whole drag thing. So I'm 46, and I remember when I was coming of age, 21, you know, many couple of decades ago. And I remember when I did drag a couple of times, and I remember I really appreciated this question. It allowed me to really reflect. And for me, it was just about a way of coming into identity, self-expression, connecting with others, finding community. So I think it's so absurd, these dumb bands, let's call them dumb bands. I have some other choice words, but I'm not going to use them right now. But you know, if you think about pop culture in this country, whatnot, like so much of it has been informed by drag. Like I think of the TV shows and the movies, and shoot, there's footage of Rudy Giuliani in drag. So then I'm like, y'all are all ridiculous. Y'all are ridiculous. Y'all are bored. I a lot of hypocrisy. They talk about family values and you know, preserving the children, and drag queen is tainting people and corrupting people. And then a lot of these states too, I looked it up, but these states that have enacted such policies, they have like, they're ranked almost the worst in education, almost the worst in access to healthcare. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Switch, this narrative is absurd. Yeah, anyways, for me, I see drag as a way to connect with others. It's a form of healing. People use it to heal, collective healing, creativity, coming into identities, self-expression, trying to figure out where you are in the world and where you fit in. And also it's kind of entertainment by us, for us too. So it's, yeah, also, you know, creating systems of safety and celebration, pride, etc. But just some of these policies, I'm like, what are y'all doing? What are y'all really doing? Like, who are you trying to fool? Like, what are you trying to cover up and take attention from?
I love that you brought up that they just must be bored. Like, like what else are you doing? What? Like, you have so many other things to focus on. Why this? Yeah, I really appreciate both of your stories there. And I think like this question is so relevant, especially like what you were all just talking about with around COVID and around like isolation. Hollis, you were talking about being isolated in your space, and like Malo doing a lot of the community work to keep your community safe, right? Like how that has really like drag has been safety, and you both said it. Drag has been safety for our community. That is where we go to see each other, to experience things, to explore and break ideas of gender binary, to break ideas of what sexual orientation can look like, what the world can look like, what dance and fashion can look like. Y'all talked about that. So I really appreciate your perspectives, and just excited to have this conversation, because I don't think that we get to talk about these things very often, like how important drag is and how impacted also was through the pandemic, was as we lost our elders that were at the forefront of bringing drag into mainstream queer culture, right? And like all of the work that they have done before us. I just really appreciate that conversation. And I think like when we're thinking about all these laws and policies, because there's so many right now, you know, Creative 303 and the drag bans and all the anti-trans rhetoric that's been happening, all of the targeted healthcare bans that have been happening now, where folks in our community now don't have access to like standard medical care. Like all of that stuff is impacting our communities, and we talked a little bit about the ways that it has. And while we might not know all the nuances of the laws or policies, we've heard about them because they're impacting our people. And I'm just wondering if you want to share about how that's showing up for those that you love. And on the other side, you know, Malo and Hollis, you both talked a little bit about community care without naming it as community care. Like, what does community care look like as we're entering, you know, Hollis, you said it, this is a new thing for our generation to see things impacted this way. Like, how do we build community care with one another as we're fighting these policies?
I think we're really fortunate that we live on the West Coast, so California, Oregon, and Washington, because in terms of all of the nation, in these three particular states, they have gender affirming care. They also have a very healthy outlook on reproductive care. And when I think about friends and some family members that live in different states, first, it kind of advises my travel to those places. Um, because as a trans man that doesn't have a deep voice, or my beard has not come in yet, I don't pass easily, so I have to think of my safety. And so for my friends that live in those areas, I I I feel really, really sad for them, because many of them are like, we just need to move. We should have moved like 4 years ago, but they didn't. Um, but we have Basic Rights Oregon there, so there's a similar type of um, organization for the state of Washington as well as the state of California and in other states that advocate for either specifically for transgender rights and or other issues that are related to the LGBTQ community in banned areas. And it's really hard, and I hate to like put people on the spot, who don't vote but are eligible to vote. Um, if you're not in that space of knowing much about the folks that are trying to run for office in those areas, um, there's a lot of other folks that are field workers on the ground, from grassroots organizations trying to really um, turn the tables on specific seats and issues in those particular states. Um, but it really does take one person who speaks to another person, and I'm really speaking to those who are very lax when it comes to those laws, or policies don't impact me. I'm doing fine. But we really need for folks that say that they love us to really um, vote on our behalf, because it's not enough for just every one of us that's in this call or our networks voting. It really takes somebody else outside of our networks to value and respect our lives enough to support policies that protect all of us, not just some of us, and to elect politicians that are aligned with our values too. Um, and I mean, it's hard, you know. People will definitely need to leave their state or their particular city in the state so that they can get certain type of gender affirming care or reproductive care elsewhere. Um, and that's sad. We live in the United States of America. Why should we have to do those things in order to sustain a quality of life that we deserve?
Thank you, Malo. Yes, I'm very happy. Going back to what you said, Malo, I'm happy to be here in the West Coast, although it's not perfect, and we have our challenges here in so many different ways. But yeah, this question was kind of brought up a lot of feelings for me. I have friends who live in some of these states, and actually a friend who is identifies as being gay invited me to come out to visit in Florida. And unfortunately, I love my friend, but that is not somewhere that I really care to go because I do have to consider my own safety. And also, yeah, the NAACP and the Human Rights Campaign said, do not go. So, there's some stuff going on there, and I couldn't live there. But I do feel like for me, the community care piece and also the education piece, having conversations, checking with folks, first off, your friends who are in these impacted areas, but also having conversations with folks who, as Malo said, folks who are not voting, or folks who will vote for a candidate. We know we have a big election next year, and I know folks who are going to vote they're going to vote red. So, and primarily want to do that because of, economic reasons. And so it always comes back down to capitalism and money. But it's like, and then they try to negotiate or reconcile it by saying, yeah, all this has happened, but the money, but this. And I'm like, for me, I couldn't make that, me personally, I couldn't just disregard all this stuff just for this. I'm like, no, my values are really important, and my values are not rooted in alleged economic gain, whatever. I do care a lot about social justice and people being treated respectfully and with dignity, and equal protection under the law, having access to freedoms and constitutional rights. Those things are really important to me. So I do try to have those conversations on the individual level. I think that's really important. Yeah, but this is a really challenging question for me to answer. Kind of conflicting, just because really sucks. Just we have more important things to be worrying about than stuff. I feel like this country, we like to regurgitate conversations and histories, and I'm like, oh, why are we here? Why are we here? So yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate both of the things that you shared. And I think one of the things too that was coming up for me while you were both talking is like, queer spaces have always been communities of care. Like, we've always had to build our own systems of care. We did that through every major pandemic. We've done that through all of the different things that have happened, all the iterations of community that we have seen, whether that's the ball scene, whether that's safety houses for folks impacted by AIDS, whether that's, through the pandemic and the work that, Malo was talking about. And it reminded me of something I saw recently about the Rainbow Railroad, I think is what it's called, and how that is a group that was supporting folks from other countries that had these really harsh laws against our community move to places where they could get safety. And now thinking about, like, what does that look like even within our own country now? Like, what would it look like to develop systems of care? And I don't know if either of you want to share anything about, like, if we could think about building on the resiliency and the beauty and the joy that comes from being queer and trans, of being part of this community, and the legacy of our ancestors who have worked so hard to make sure that we are still alive today, what would that look like for us to engage in that community of care today?
Brianna, I've been thinking a lot about how mental health is like a taboo issue that doesn't get spoken of enough in our spaces, and I'm thinking about the attempts during the pandemic to have like a LGBTQ camp, or and then the transition into like the housing crisis that's happening there in Portland, and how many different impacted demographics within the population there just doesn't have the resources. Or I think I just read recently, like Governor Kotek just rescinded $2.6 million from housing. So I think maybe we don't have enough collaborations with the right combination of municipality staff, as well as experienced nonprofit folks who have done housing work to meet those needs. Because my fear is that, the pandemic, yeah, it may have unveiled a lot of different problems, but then we still haven't addressed them appropriately. And one of them is mental health, which I think leads to the housing crisis. There's no way someone can live a a life of quality if you don't have that addressed, as well as safe and clean housing. And then the other steps for like gender affirming care, or whatever type of healthcare that you need, can be addressed, once you do have clean and safe housing. I think that's sort of been bothering me in the back of my mind, is that we identified all these different gaps, and deficits happening during the pandemic. And once we get close to coming up with a solution, people just kind of withdraw, like maybe this isn't, maybe we can divert this money somewhere else. Like, wait, you already committed to this. Why aren't we seeing it through? And that to me, I, I don't know. It just really makes me lose faith, in people that we trusted to vote on to make these decisions on our behalf. And now they're feeling pressure that maybe this money shouldn't actually go to this and go somewhere else. So I guess being treated as no longer a priority, um, how is that even, you know, what does it take to get the kind of movement? You already have that you were going to commit this amount of money, and then it no longer happens. So we're not a priority anymore because we're not on the agenda. The political agenda that got you where you're at is no longer, I guess we're no longer, we're not a priority. We're not important anymore. And that really hurts.
Thank you, Malo. I'll respond briefly. Just going back to the whole conversation about houselessness. One thing about that is that people tend to view these social these systems of oppression and these isms, they view them in isolation, which is really problematic. So folks who are houseless are not necessarily just houseless. There's so many intersecting issues. So someone can become houseless, which can lead to mental health issues. Or mental health issues can lead to houselessness or substance use, or or any all kinds of different things. I don't want to get too much into it, but it's really a I feel like it's a very, very complicated, comprehensive issue. And I'm really, yeah, I being in Portland, I've seen changes here just since I've been here in the last 6 years. And so that's one thing. Going back to the question about the community, community of care, I think it's really important for the solidarity building and cross-cultural capacity building. That is so important because the way that this system, these systems are set up is to have folks disenfranchised in one way or another, divided, competing for resources and pointing the finger at other people. So it's classic conflict theory. But if folks came together and realized that there's really, that all this stuff is happening under one umbrella, which is capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy. If we have more conversations about that. So it really makes me sad when I see communities of color blaming other communities of color or causing violence against other communities of color or LGBTQ communities, at odds with this community. It really makes me sad. So I feel like more real conversations need to happen around that and organizing. I think that's really important to help not only increase, build capacity for the community of care, but also to stand and fight united against a common, the universal threat, the universal oppressor, I'll say, the system.
I especially appreciate that perspective, Hollis. I think anytime that we can have these conversations, I love it when we can bring it back to what it is, colonization. Like it's colonization, it's white supremacy that created all of these systems that we now have to like figure out how to navigate, right? And in especially cutie BIPOC community, right? Like we have the ability to see this expansive what is possible, right? Because we've had to always create what that could look like for us, whether that was gender, presentation, sexual orientation, thought process, relationship styles, right? Like we've always had this really expansive beyond what colonization can hold in its very small mind, right? And so I really appreciate that you brought us back to that, Hollis. And I'm wondering too if we can just, if we pivot a little bit to like all of this stuff is happening, and also we also survived it, right? Like giving us a moment to recognize that like we have all survived that. We've survived the education system that wanted us to not exist or talk about ourselves. We've survived this political landscape as, you know, where we are now. We operate within the white supremacist system of our jobs and our healthcare systems and everything else, right? And I'm wondering what, you know, thinking to our queer youth, our trans youth that are coming up in these systems, that are living and experiencing today's world, what would it have meant for you, or what would it mean today to see ourselves, see our identities, our experiences, our ways of being and knowing as cutie BIPOC people show up in our education systems in a positive way, right? Like what would that look like, and how can we support those youth that are there now? I guess, like, what would you have told your tiny self, right? Like, what would you have wanted to see? Big questions for a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. I love it though.
Well, two things that I know I want to give shout outs to Oregon is having a 2S PIA LGBTQ plus student success plan, you know, that they actually voted it into a bill. And because I was part of that commission 2.5 years ago, um, I bugged them about having a Pacific Islander student success plan, and that became a bill, and that also passed. So, what I would encourage about a younger person who is probably trying to figure out, you know, things about themselves, that there are folks like us that are fighting for their future, um, things that we didn't have, you know, as tools, we try to create in our lives now, um, because we didn't see it when we were growing up. And, you know, I have a good friend that has a non-binary 10-year-old, and just completely, I'll speak on my story, but it's, you know, it's endearing, you know, to see other youth struggling, as I did, you know, because when I was younger and knew that I was different, um, I had to kind of suppress a lot of who I was in order to um, graduate high school, get into college. And it was in college where I was able to explore more of who I am. But those younger years were tough. Um, but, you know, there's folks like everybody in this room that is, you know, organizing, working, you know, in different fields that are doing their best to make sure that kids that are like me have an opportunity to really be their full authentic selves. And I don't want to be like, you got to be strong, because that's not for me to say. And I don't know what a young kid is going through just to survive, in their current body. But what I do know is that we didn't have the internet either. And so we're out here. There's a lot of resources. We can help parents too, to try to help understand what their children are going to. And I just tapped into some really great like mental therapists, BIPOC, and some of them actually specialize in cutie BIPOC clientele. And we're slowly but surely getting there. And I wish there were more professionals in that field, and folks like Hollis, because I think it would be super helpful for our young people to know that uh, there are options, more options and alternatives that were ever offered, in my generation. And I'm slightly older than you, Hollis. I'm 50.
Right on, Malo. Thank you. Yeah, this question. I remember when I was a kid a long time ago, and I knew I was different. I had memories going back to when I was 6 years old, and I realized that what the world was presenting to me didn't align with my interpretation of the world. I remember where I was, and this is 40 years ago. So, yeah, I guess I would just tell youth today that, yeah, definitely there is a lot of resources available now that were not available back in the day. The internet is a great resource at our fingertips, and which is pretty much widely accessible. But just also we're resources. We learn to become resources to ourselves. So that is a really big thing. There's times of turbulence for sure. And the turbulence, I don't think, speaking for me, is in my experience, has never gone away completely on my journey. So that's just something I can speak up from my perspective. But to answer the question, and just going back to my previous job when I worked at the university, definitely just administrations who have whose actions match their words. I always saw like it was a lot of times it was not aligned, or it was just performance or lip service. So that needs to stop. And always the folks who are the most marginalized, racialized, disenfranchised, who need the most services and support going through like higher learning, going through education, they're always the ones who get their stuff chopped, like at funding. It's like, I remember planning the Queer Students of Color Conference, and every year they kept taking away money, but but you're doing such a great job, and also that conference is Portland State's only major conference that's racial justice focused, that's also intersectional. And I really wish it had more visibility, and it was appreciated that way and presented that way and valued that way. So there's that piece. But bringing it to modern day context with what's going on in these K through 12 institutions, especially in other parts of the country, just having representation among educators who can actually come to work and their own full complete selves, and they don't have to hide themselves or put their pictures down of their spouse or their partner, and also having curriculum that isn't about erasure, erasing people, and you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that. Let's say it happened this way. Let's enslaved Black folks they benefited because they got professional development skills. All that stuff, all these false narratives, it's not, it's it's ridiculous and it's harmful, and it's really I'm just gonna leave it there, but I'm just gonna leave it there.
Thank you both for sharing, Malo and Hollis. In light of all the ridiculousness that we are experiencing in this world, where do you find hope in the work that you do? And how do you carry this hope forward in your work? Can you speak a little bit about that?
It sounds weird, but you know, when I came back to help take care of my elder father, who's 88, he's an older man, but just the care level, that I just couldn't see myself and in my culture for us to put him in a facility um, to receive the kind of care that we give him in speaking our Samoan language and preparing the meals that he likes in a certain way. Um, so when I think about what this work means, I I'm looking at an elderly person within my community, my my loved one, and thinking that gives me hope because I am practicing what I saw as a younger person now being reciprocated um, to my father who is going through his aging process. And then I see the hope of what could possibly be with my niece just returned from Samoa with her kids. And so I have both spectrums. I have my dad, and then I have the real little ones. And, the hope that all the things that we're doing in this movement work, when we're trying to shed light on issues that are often overshadowed or eclipsed, because there's other priority of issues, there's other priorities of policies that seem to always eclipse, the that part of a movement where you feel like we're about to advance and then we actually take 10 steps back. And the hope is in those moments where you might think it's an initial defeat, but it's actually just helping you become patient and learning that there is going to be that moment in that process that will advance you forward. So for me, it's really living my values and my familial life, my personal life, and also projecting that and being transparent about that as I move in community work. And then in community, there's so many stories, harrowing stories of people that have been resilient, that may not have the verbiage that we do about policies, laws, system work, um, but they are the people that turn my heart on fire, that make everything worth it. Like every phone call, every text message, every email that goes out to anyone, I mean, that fuels this movement forward because it really just takes that one other person to listen and maybe do something different than they normally do. And then that person maybe share it with someone else. So my hope is always in people, people in our personal circles, people in our community, because I have numerous stories and it's enough. It's enough for me to keep going.
That's so beautiful, Malo. Thank you. Yeah, I find hope. I'll begin just with the younger generations. I think a lot of these young folks are on fire and they do not have time, and they're pissed off and angry, and they're resisting and they're fighting, and which are things that that I wasn't able to do when I was their age. So I find a lot of hope in the younger generations and also the incoming generations. I think there's going to be a lot of organizing and mobilizing, and we're already seeing it. So I find a lot of hope in that. Mala, you spoke about elders and ancestors, and I also find hope in that. I dream a lot about my elders, and it really, I don't know, it how can I say this? It just lifts me up, and it gives me hope, and it gives me kind of strength to do the work and to go on. So that to me is really, really important. And then I also find hope in self-care and resting and taking care of myself and being aware of mental health and being mindful of these things, and my own capacity not to burn out, and normalizing those conversations about mental health, which I really try to do. People, mental health, I mean, it's so connected to the physical, and the physical is connected to the mental, and you can't really isolate them because they are really, really interconnected. So resting is important. Knowing the signs when you need to rest, when you know what this system's trying to burn me out, and that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be really, really heavy and be oppressive to where you get to a point where you're just like, I can't do this anymore, or I'm sick, or having a stroke or something like that. So just being mindful about resting and taking care of ourselves, and the intent and the design of the system and what it's actually trying to do, alongside keeping people divided. I think that's really important. So the younger generations tapping into wisdom of elders, and also just knowing when to rest and embracing that, all those things really give me hope.
Just sitting in a space of gratitude for you both. Thank you both for leaning into these very heavy, meaty, tofu-y questions today that we have for you all. Before I get to the last question, if there's anyone that's here for the live taping and has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to them before we end today. But jumping into kind of our last question of the evening, what does it mean to be in solidarity or accomplish it with this community, the queer community, the trans community, around these large policy decisions that impact our daily lives? What does that mean to you all to be in solidarity or accomplish it with the community? And I'll put it in the chat too.
Me? Okay. Thanks, Malo. Yeah, I think a lot again about just the coalition solidarity building, but really the cross-cultural piece that is so important. Race is that thing that keeps people divided, and there's a lot of racism within trans and queer communities. There's a lot, a lot. So just being able to lead with race, and knowing that when it comes to trans and queer conversations and issues, it's not a one size fits all. So it really isn't, and I think that often gets lost, and people try to make it a one size fits all, and then we have that's where more harm happens, and more division. So really for me, just I put a lot of value on the cross-cultural piece. Malo, I'll never forget Utopia PDX, that event I went to. I believe I think it was February of 2020. It was right before the pandemic. It was downtown on the park blocks, and it was called Seeding Solidarity. I think I still have the flyer, but it was an event that was supposed to build solidarity between Black folks and also folks who are, Pacific Island, from the Pacific Islands. So that was really powerful to me, and I think more of that is needed. It's something that stuck with me for over 3 years. And I really put a lot of value on that. And I think that's such it needs to be a big part of the conversation, because people are often become isolated and separated and focused on their own, the own things that they're facing. So yeah.
Thanks, Hollis. Yeah, that was for our Black History Month. We had a panel at RAC, the Regional Arts Cultural Center. So what we did was we centered the voices of queer and trans leaders in the community. And we uplifted, their narrative and supported it because we wanted to learn. We don't know how to move about, Black Lives Matter without consulting and being in community with our queer and trans Black leaders. And then the year after, we actually launched a virtual conversation of Black America Under Siege, and we also got a similar panel, but with national queer and trans Black leaders, because we wanted to follow the lead from our own queer and trans community, from the Black leaders within our queer and trans community. We didn't want to just, willy-nilly through a movement saying, we're in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, but we don't know what that means, right? We know what it means to us, but we should be really looking to the people most impacted by certain types of policies. And I think that has always been at the root of my type of organizing with Utopia, was to learn beyond our own lens. And thanks for coming and supporting that event, Hollis. Yeah, I'm still looking at the question, and I had something in mind, but you threw me off, Hollis, with with your response. So I wanted to at least address that. I always think about solidarity. Solidarity is, how can we be in solidarity, is how can I be solid within myself so that I can be solid to another community. So that's why you saw these types of events that we had, was because I wanted to be able to provide solidarity by being a solid person, but I don't know everything and I don't pretend to know everything. So collaborating, doing cross-cultural community organizing always was something that I was open to. Brianna and Stephanie know, like, when, what was it, those gift cards were coming through, I'm like, I'm gonna divide this up with everybody. I am sharing my resources with everybody because we all needed it. People were getting pinched for rent, for groceries, all kinds of things. And so, I just always think, like, how can I be a good accomplice or someone who's solid to someone else, is I need to have those skills to be solid so I can be in solidarity, or I can help someone in their movement. And I don't take it, I don't take over their space. I let them lead it and I just go and support. And I think that's important too, is learning as a leader you don't always have to lead. A really good leader listens and knows when to step back and support, and I think those are some key things is you don't always have to lead, but you always know when to step in and help. And when they want you to lead, maybe say, what about this other person? You know, Going back to Hollis about like who's at the table, right? Making sure the invitation is going out to folks that are missing. So yeah, I've learned through the years, you don't have to be the one to carry it all, and I think that's the best way we can show up.
Malo, I really appreciate that, the piece about being a leader, but not always necessarily having to lead. So most of my stuff that I've done, I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and then I do try to figure out who can I lift up, who can I empower, who can I provide an opportunity to, that is really important. And I think that is part of a lot of these institutions because all the power is so concentrated in a hierarchical way at the top, and people don't like to make room for other folks to be at the table, to develop some skills, to lead. So that is really important. I appreciate you saying that. That's really important to me. And that's part of what we see going on on the national level with just the government. Like some of these people who are in leadership roles, they want to stick onto it for as long as possible at the detriment of all the people, all their constituents that they supposedly answer to. So that's a big part of the problem. And that is like, how do we make space for new people to step into leadership roles and to pass the baton, like knowing when to pass the baton, knowing when to share the baton, knowing when to help foster leadership skills in other people. So I really appreciate you saying that.
There were so many good one-liners from you all today. I was trying to scribble it down, but I'm really glad that we recorded everything. But like I heard, Malo, you talking about, and you mentioned this at the beginning too when you were first talking, but like being solid in myself so that I can be in solidarity with other communities. Like that's such a powerful perspective. Right. And you talked about that and like, I need to be there for myself so that I can be there for my community. And now we need to be solid in our community to be there for other communities. Like such a powerful and relational way of looking at how this work can happen. And then Hollis, you saying we learned to become resources to ourselves. That was such like, there is both stories of trauma and pain there, and also stories of hope and joy and survivance that are just inherent in that statement. And those are the two things that like really stuck out with me from both of you today. I just have so much gratitude for being in this space. And I want to just invite either of you, is there anything else that you want to share or talk about or just have said in this space as we, come towards our closing with one another today?
So
I do love how polite both of you are.
Okay, I'll go. Thanks, Malo. Malo, first, it's so great to see you. It's been a while. And I really appreciate it being in this space today. Yeah, I love the work of UPRISE. Y'all do some amazing work, amazing consistent work, so much, very much needed work. So just really grateful to be here. I did enter this space very nervous because I don't do a lot of panels. But I really appreciated the conversation, and I'm leaving with a lot to reflect on. So, and Malo, that one-liner, being solid in yourself, that is really going to stick with me. Just like, how can I be more solid in myself so I can, you know, be in solidarity with other people? That's something that I'm really going to think about. It's going to help inform my work and my practice and who I am. So thank you for that.
I know, Hollis. I loved working with you with QSOC. It was like what, 2, 3 years, however long you were doing it before the pandemic. I really loved working with you. So that was great. Thank you, Uprise. I mean, I feel like I know you all because when you all were in your infancy, we were like a toddler. And so I think we were helping each other, but where you're at now, I'm just so happy and thrilled with your growth. It's so good for the community. And this space is special to me because I feel like my queer and transness really helped me to become a better Samoan, believe it or not. And in being a better Samoan, it really helped carve out my queerness and transness within my Samoan family, my Samoan community, and the greater Pacific Islander community. So I'm grateful for my queerness and transness because I think I always felt like I had to, with my Samoan community, I had to be like Samoan, you know, and they'll sort of know about these other parts of my life. But I think it really, there was a great reconciliation that made me better at both by being fully myself. So I love being queer. I love being trans. The laws will be the laws. I won't be, I won't, that won't stop me from being me.
What like a beautiful note to end that on. We're not going to stop being us. So welcome to the party, everybody else. So much gratitude for both of you, for our ASL interpreters, for our captioner. If you joined us for this live taping, thank you so much. It's going to go ahead and live on our YouTubes once we put it up into the interwebs. Follow us there. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. And we are just so grateful for this space. Is there anything else you wanted to share, Ria, before we end today?
No, just thank you all for being here. Thank you all that it's tuning in the audience or watching us YouTube later. This has been just a really great conversation. Malo, Hollis, grateful for you both.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and end our recording then.